Everything shattered the moment that footage surfaced, not rumors, not whispers, but something far more dangerous. Something Meghan allegedly secured herself. Witness footage that doesn't just suggest, it points, it connects, it links Harry directly to a secret relationship he was never supposed to have, and suddenly the entire narrative flips. Because this wasn't just about messages anymore, not just late-night texts or suspicious disappearances explained away as meetings. No, this was visual. This was recorded. This was something you can't simply deny with a statement or bury under silence. And insiders are now saying Meghan didn't stumble onto this, she hunted it. Quietly, patiently, strategically, because once you have footage, everything changes. They say it started small, a shift in behavior, a pattern too clean to be accidental, a man moving through his life like he had two versions of it running at the same time. One public, polished, carefully controlled, and another hidden, layered, calculated, and Meghan, whether by instinct or suspicion, stopped reacting and started watching. Because here's what no one talks about openly. When someone starts planning an exit, they don't announce it. They prepare it quietly, and those messages she allegedly found, they weren't chaotic. They weren't emotional slip-ups. They were structured, timed almost, scheduled. That's when the tone shifted, not just in the relationship, but in her approach. Because if he was building something behind her back, she was now documenting it. And this is where it gets darker, because sources are now hinting that the footage Meghan allegedly secured wasn't accidental. It wasn't paparazzi luck. It was placement, positioning, being in the right place because someone made sure she would be. Witnesses, people who had seen things, noticed patterns, connected timelines, people who were no longer willing to stay silent. Think about that for a second. Not just one person talking, but multiple eyes watching the same story unfold from different angles. That's not coincidence, that's confirmation. And then comes the part that changed everything. The identity of the woman. Not random, not distant, not some passing connection. Someone already embedded. Someone who knew the circle, understood the dynamics, fit too easily into a life that wasn't supposed to include her. That's what made the footage explosive. Because it didn't just show moments, it showed familiarity, repetition, continuity. And when Meghan saw that, something snapped. Not quiet anger, not controlled damage. No, this was something else entirely. Because it's one thing to suspect, it's another to see it, to watch it, to replay it over and over again until every doubt turns into certainty. And here's the twist no one expected. She didn't walk away. She started filming. Not publicly, not openly, but quietly building something. Because if there was already footage, if witnesses were already talking, then this wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. This was material, a story, a narrative that could be shaped, edited, revealed at the right moment. And suddenly, the whispers began. A documentary, not just about their lives, not just about their struggles, but something sharper, something more targeted, a version of events that doesn't just defend her, but exposes him. Because what happens when the person being watched realizes they're now the subject? That's where the tension explodes. Because Harry, according to sources, didn't react the way anyone expected. No denial, no panic, no desperate attempt to control the situation. Just distance. A kind of detachment that only made everything worse. As if the exposure wasn't the problem, but the timing was. And that's when the bigger picture started forming. Because this wasn't happening in isolation. The relationship strain, the financial pressure, the shifting alliances, it all starts lining up like pieces of a puzzle that suddenly make too much sense. A man balancing multiple narratives. A woman realizing she's not just part of the story, she's being written out of it. So what do you do when you realize that? You rewrite the ending. And that's exactly what this alleged documentary feels like. Not just a reaction, but a move. A calculated, controlled response to something that was already unfolding behind closed doors. Because footage doesn't just capture moments, it captures truth. Or at least a version of it that's impossible to ignore. And this is where everything stops looking like chaos and starts looking like strategy. Because once that alleged footage exists, once those witness accounts are secured and aligned, the story doesn't just sit there waiting to explode, it gets shaped, refined, and positioned like something far more calculated than a reaction. Because Meghan didn't just see something she wasn't supposed to see. She realized something far more unsettling. That every moment, every meeting, every carefully timed absence was part of something that had been unfolding for far longer than anyone publicly acknowledged. And once that realization settled in, there was no going back to pretending, no returning to the version of reality that had already started cracking beneath the surface. Because the sequence never lied, it only got clearer, sharper, more uncomfortable scroll, the deeper you look at it, the messages came first, structured and deliberate. Then the meetings, hidden but consistent. Then the behavior, distant but controlled. And finally, the confirmation, not through confrontation, but through observation, through pieces coming together until the full picture was impossible to ignore. And what makes it even more unsettling is that this wasn't reckless. It wasn't emotional. It was precise, almost clinical, like someone managing two separate worlds without allowing them to collide until the moment they no longer could be, kept apart. And the footage, the alleged footage, becomes the turning point, not just because of what it shows, but because of what it implies, because it suggests that what was happening wasn't a sudden mistake or a moment of weakness. It was ongoing, sustained, maintained with intention. And that's the part that changes everything, because a single moment can be explained away, but a pattern, a repeated sequence captured from different angles, supported by different witnesses, that becomes something else entirely, something that can't be dismissed as coincidence or misunderstanding. And Meghan, according to the unfolding narrative, didn't rush, didn't explode publicly, didn't immediately confront the world with what she had. Instead, she held it, studied it, let it build, because the difference between reacting and revealing is timing, and timing is power. And if there is one thing this situation begins to suggest, is that the power dynamic quietly shifted the moment she stopped asking questions and started collecting answers. Because what happens when the person you thought you understood completely turns out to be operating on an entirely different script, one that doesn't include you in the ending, one that has already begun writing you out while keeping you present for appearance, for image, for continuity. And that's when the emotional collapse described earlier suddenly takes on a different meaning, because it wasn't just about betrayal, it was about realization, the kind that hits all at once and forces every past moment to be reinterpreted. Under a harsher light, every conversation, every absence, every explanation suddenly feeling incomplete, insufficient, rehearsed, and the witnesses, the ones now being quietly referenced, become just as important as the footage itself, because they don't just support what's seen, they validate what's suspected, they fill in the spaces between the moments. They confirm that what appears isolated is actually connected, that what seems accidental is actually part of a sequence, and that's where the narrative stops being deniable and starts becoming unavoidable. Because once multiple perspectives align, once separate accounts begin echoing the same timeline, the same behavior, the same hidden pattern, the story begins to solidify in a way that silence alone can't erase. And yet, despite all of this, despite the mounting weight of what is allegedly being assembled, nothing has been released, nothing has been confirmed publicly, which only deepens the tension, because it raises the question that lingers underneath everything: why wait? Why hold on to something this explosive instead of letting it detonate immediately? And the answer, if the pattern holds, is control, because releasing something too early weakens its impact, but holding it, shaping it, building it into something larger, something structured like a documentary, that transforms it from an accusation into a narrative, from a reaction into a statement. And that's where the story turns from personal to strategic, because a documentary isn't just about showing something, it's about framing it, guiding how it's seen, controlling the order in which it's revealed, deciding what comes first and what comes last, deciding which moments carry weight and which ones create doubt. And if that's what is truly being built here, then this isn't just exposure. It's construction, it's storytelling with a purpose, one that doesn't just respond to what happened, but defines how it will be remembered. And Harry, positioned at the center of all of this, becomes something more than just a figure in a scandal, becomes a subject, a focal point of a narrative that may already be complete behind the scenes, even if the world hasn't seen it yet. And that's the part that creates the most tension, because if the footage exists, if the witnesses have spoken, if the timeline has been assembled, then the only thing missing is the moment it's released, the moment it moves from private knowledge to public reality. And the silence now feels heavier than anything that's already been said, because silence in a situation like this doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is being prepared, positioned, timed, and the longer it continues, the more it suggests that what's coming isn't just another revelation, it's something far more deliberate, something designed to shift perception completely. And the question that refuses to settle is no longer whether something happened, but when it will be shown, how it will be presented, and what it will change once it is. Because if this narrative follows its current trajectory, then the final reveal won't just answer questions, it will create new ones, deeper ones, ones that reach beyond a single relationship and into something far more complicated, far more controlled, far more intentional than anyone initially believed.